Hello, my fellow gun theorists, and welcome to Gun Theory. Today, we're looking at something that video games almost always get wrong, and perhaps looking at a game that actually does it somewhat right. What I'd like to look at is the reaction of players in hellish combat conditions, as well as what reaction is effective in the game versus in the real world. But before we get into the meat, if you like this sort of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to get juicy content every Tuesday and Thursday with bonus content on some Fridays. So in most video games, like say Call of Duty, when you're engaged by the enemy, the normal response that players have is to turn towards the threat and try to kill the enemy before he kills them. This is usually the best option you have if you want to win in video games. Sometimes player will use other tactics like the drop shot and drop to prone to throw the enemy's aim off, or even strafe side to side, and in some cases, this is helpful. But all of these reactions are absolutely wrong in most cases. Your very first reaction in the real world upon hearing the crack of a bullet whiz by you, or worse yet, the thud of a bullet impacting you, should be to move to cover as fast as you can make your body do so. If you are able to safely return fire during that movement to cover, you would want to do so, but if your bound to cover stops you from being able to shoot back, it's not the end of the world. The shooting back during your movement to cover is not supposed to hit the enemy, as it most likely won't. What it's supposed to do is suppress the enemy and hopefully make him get behind his own cover, which stops the stream of bullets coming at you while you get to your own cover. At this point, the firefight begins, because until this point, it was really just someone shooting at you. This firefight is usually not as fast-paced as the high-octane Call of Duty matches usually are. This gun battle could be slow, terrifying, and it might cause you to have need of some extra underwear. This reaction will usually get you killed in video games, and I think this is for a couple of reasons. One is that the developers of these games want the games to be non-stop, fast-paced action. Number two is something that I thought video games wouldn't be getting right until VR progressed just a little bit. And that is engaging the fight-or-flight reflex in the same way that a soldier's instinct is. This is very difficult to do in current video game settings because at best the sound design and visuals are what engage the player. The player's body is really not engaged all that much. But of course, with VR coming so smoothly, I think on the right games, it will absolutely give players that highly intense fight-or-flight reaction that they would actually have were they really being shot at, or at least a bigger nugget of that feeling. And I think we'll know when they've achieved this, because some players' first reaction to the game would be to drop into a fetal position and become hysterical when the bullets start flying. The next reason I think video games don't get combat right is self-preservation. In most games, dying really isn't a big deal. You might wait up to 15 seconds to respawn, or a couple of minutes for the next round to begin if it's something more hardcore. In these cases, the only reason players have to really care about self-preservation is the wait time if they die. That obviously will not evoke the same instincts as actually being in real danger would. In fact, a fun tactic of mine in Rising Storm 2 Vietnam is to charge the enemy with a white phosphorus grenade and throw it into a crowd of them. I of course get shot, but I still get upwards of 6, 7, 8 kills after I die if the grenade was well placed. This is obviously not even close to realistic, as nobody would be willing to do that under normal circumstances. With that being said, however, there are some games that make dying far more punishing on the player and thus make players exhibit a more intense self-preservation instinct in-game. But it still isn't quite the same sort of self-preservation, as it still doesn't pose a real danger to you in real life. To achieve the real self-preservation reaction, the game would have to be so engaging to the senses that it tricks them enough to believe that they might really be in danger. And for the most part, I don't think video games will be able to do this until VR becomes more widely used and developers who wish to make more realistic games make the switch. There is, however, one game I've recently started playing that isn't VR that really gets as close to this as they can. And that game is Escape from Tarkov. I went into this game with no knowledge on how to play or what works, and it was a wonderland for me. They get the guns themselves so right that you have to worry about what size of riser you have to mount a red dot sight. But more to the point, when I got in game and started getting shot at, it really got my heart rate up and gave me a decent nugget of that fight or flight response. And going further, my first reaction to my buddy's head suddenly becoming a red mist was what I would have done in real life. Haul ass over to the nearest concrete barrier and kiss the dirt. Call of Duty would have rewarded a snap reaction of turning and shooting, but the sniper at about 200 meters away clearly had the advantage, so that would have gotten me killed quite quickly in this game. Another time, I had been shot up pretty thoroughly. My leg was broken from a couple of gunshots and my arms were also heavily wounded. Trying to aim with sights wasn't particularly viable because the wounds on the arms caused the gun to wobble and not have proper sight alignment. My reaction was something you would train to do in real life in the event of maybe a home invasion. Turn your gun-mounted flashlight on the narrowest beam setting and use it to help in point shooting accuracy, which is where you don't actually use your sights. Using this method, I limped along with a splinted leg and very narrowly survived several engagements with that flashlight-assisted point shooting saving me every time. I made it to the extraction and secured the sweet loot that I had worked so hard for. I think Escape from Tarkov gets combat and gun battles in general as right as regular video games can. The things you would do in real life actually work in this game. And the sheer panic you get when you hear the crack of a bullet whiz by isn't something that I feel in many other games that are claimed to be realistic. The sound design on this game is absolutely a masterpiece. It does a great job of fooling my senses. Next, let's go back to the whole splinted broken leg thing. The medical system in this game is amazing. Just about the only thing they're missing right now is tourniquets. You can have a severely bleeding wound, you can have broken bones from bullet impacts. It sounds overwhelming and tedious, but it is very simple and streamlined. It delivers the realism of a realistic medical and health system while avoiding the buggy and clunky stuff of games like Arma. You will never be so happy to find a bandage on a downed foe as you will in this game. And this medical system, again, helps to add to the self-preservation that while your leg isn't actually going to be broken in real life, you really don't want to be limping around in a war zone, or worse yet, slowly bleed to death while you frantically tear the map apart looking for a bandage to stem the tide. This game also makes death highly punishing. Anything you bring into the world will be lost upon death, as well as any loot you found before you died. That precious M4 you worked weeks to build by collecting every individual component is never safe. You could lose it 30 seconds into a game. While this isn't real self-preservation, it at least forces players to exhibit some form of it to the extreme, and that extreme self-preservation mimics the real-world counterpart quite well. Forcing self-preservation is very important in making a video game realistic. Without self-preservation, players can't be suppressed. It doesn't matter how many bullets you hear flying by or hitting the cover you're behind. If you don't have a strong wish to keep yourself alive, you will not be suppressed as you would be in real life. Something that I personally found very interesting is that the things Escape from Tarkov gets right aren't always just being more hyper-realistic. It's clever use of game systems, sound, and visuals that trick your brain into feeling or doing the things that end up making it more realistic overall. And the cherry on top is that there aren't a bunch of awful clunky systems that ruin the things that the game does get right. I'm looking at you, Arma. But I hope you learned something. If you like this sort of content, make sure to subscribe, like, and maybe even consider becoming a patron of this channel on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.